My name is Lynn and I'm an addict. Open-mindedness. I guess in order to speak about open-mindedness, I'd have to share a little bit with you about who I am and how I got here. I got here because I was using drugs that I couldn't stop, but besides that, I really got here because I was living in the state of Florida and they had taken my children away from me because of my active addiction. Can you hear me now? Should I talk louder? Okay, all right. Well, anyhow, I was living in the state of Florida and they had taken my children away from me because of active addiction. I had abandoned my kids. Their dad was in prison and I left them in a house for 5 or 6 weeks by themselves. And I went on a run to Jamaica. So when I came back to the state of Florida, there was a warrant out for my arrest for abandonment. I was in a lot of trouble. I didn't know where to go and I didn't know what to do. So I called up my family here on Staten Island and they gave me an opportunity to come into recovery. And I guess that was my first experience with being open-minded. I was 38 years old. And I was using drugs against my will, and I couldn't stop. And I didn't think that recovery was an option for me. I had grown up with the belief that once a junkie, always a junkie, you know, and especially living on Staten Island, it was... people were pretty judgmental against addicts. It was a really uncomfortable place to be, like in the 60s and the 70s. Well, anyhow, I came up here and I got introduced to Narcotics Anonymous, and that's how I got clean. And when I first came to these meetings, I came through the Helpline. I had come up to my aunt and uncle's house. They lived out in Huguenot, and they had flown down to the state of Florida and got my 3 children before they were institutionalized. So I went to their house and I called up on the helpline and they sent these ladies to my house to pick me up and bring me to meetings. And these ladies had told me that if I went to meetings with them a day at a time and I didn't pick up, I had a good chance at getting clean. And I didn't believe them. But I did it anyway, you know, because like my back was against the wall and I really didn't have any place left to go. And I wanted to get my kids back. I wanted my family not to be angry with me. I was full of a lot of shame and I felt a lot of guilt, and I thought maybe coming here I could appease everybody, you know, and like not have people so mad at me anymore. And what happened was I started coming to the meetings, and at first I just listened, because I didn't understand about recovery. I didn't understand about addiction. You know, I knew I ate pills, I knew I shot cocaine, I knew I shot heroin, I knew I drank alcohol, but I didn't know about addiction. You know, I knew about chemicals and mind-altering drugs, but I didn't know about addiction. So I came here and I was quiet. And I listened. And I came here for about 5 months before I could really raise my hand and identify myself as an addict. I felt so bad about who I was and where I had been and what I had done. I didn't even think that I could honor myself enough to raise my hand in front of a group of people and admit that I was an addict. You know, I thought I was like the worst person that ever came into these rooms. And I was also afraid that if I did raise my hand and I started to share with people who I was and what my pain was, that I would get pushed out of the rooms, you know, that people would say, oh my God, she abandoned her children, you know, her husband was in prison and she slept with other men. Oh my God, she stuck needles in her arms, you know, because that's what I thought addiction was. And this very special lady on Staten Island came up to me at a meeting once, and she offered to sponsor me. And I was shocked that somebody would come up and offer to sponsor me, because I was too scared to ask anybody. And I said, okay, and she gave me her phone number. And I started calling her and going to meetings with her. And what this lady did was she started teaching me about being open-minded, She started teaching me about that my way of thinking was very small and very diseased. It was based on fear. It was based on not having any faith that there was anything greater than me or higher than me that could help heal me. And I started to listen to her. And I started to share myself a little at a time, with a little bit of people at a time. And we had a meeting up on top of the hill. It was up at the college. It was on Sunday nights. And I think it was like every third Sunday of the month they had what they called this spiritual meeting. And I didn't know anything about spirituality. I knew about religion, because I was raised Irish Catholic, so I knew about religion, and I knew about a God I was going to go to hell anyway, because I had broken all the commandments that I was raised with, and I was scared of that higher power, I was afraid of that God. And I started going to these spiritual meetings at top of the hill, and I started to listen. And I started to get just a little bit open-minded to a possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was a loving God. And there was somebody who loved me in spite of my disease, And there was somebody who forgave me a long time ago. And I started to get the idea that maybe the problem with me was that God forgave me, but I thought I was so much greater than God, I didn't forgive myself, And I didn't learn this on my own. I learned it from going to the spiritual meeting on top of the hill and sitting quiet and listening to other people who had come in before me and had more time than I did, and were learning a source of being able to start to love themselves. And then there was the kids, there was the 3 kids who, I heard Katrina talking about it before. My active addiction had done a tremendous amount of damage to, spiritually, emotionally, physically. As shattered as I was from the active addiction, the children were 100 times more shattered than me, because they never really had the opportunity to have anybody that was healthy to give them guidance or show them what love was or acceptance. Somebody who I was physically, emotionally, and verbally abusive with my children. So I had to start seeking out more women in Narcotics Anonymous who had experience in this area, and that was another form of being open-minded, accepting that there were also women greater than I was who had experienced this and who had healed and were capable of allowing the healing to take place with themselves and their children. I had to come to a point in these rooms where now I accepted that God loved me, but I had to accept that I was worthy enough to allow my children to love me, and that was a real hard thing for me. I had to start reading a lot of spiritual books about dysfunctional families, and that healing was possible. It could take place. And I used to hear people say a lot that they weren't responsible for their disease before recovery, and that my sponsor used to say to me, Lynn, do you believe you have a disease? And I'd say, well, yeah. And she'd say, well, if you believe you have a disease, why do you keep beating yourself up in recovery and not allowing good things to happen for you because you think you don't deserve it, And then I found out I was being close-minded again. I was getting stuck in that little space that had all the fear and the lack of faith and that little, the way I could explain that space was, it's the way I felt about Lynn when I was a little girl. You know what I mean? I thought that, like, I wasn't like anybody else. I would never amount to anything, and everything I did was wrong anyhow, and life never worked out, so, like, why even try? And this is the little space that I got boxed into in recovery. That little place where it's impossible for me to be open-minded. And what happens to me in recovery is every time there's a new awareness, a new spiritual awakening, a new baby step to take through something I haven't experienced before, I get stuck in that box first, you know what I mean? And then I got to start sharing it with people. And then I got to reach out again and find somebody else who did it before me, who's got experience in that area. And it like goes on and on and on. I got divorced in recovery, you know, and my thinking was, you made your bed, you got to lie in it, you married this man, you were married to him for 18 years before you came into recovery. It don't matter he still uses, you know, it don't matter that he's going to beat you and the kids when he comes out of prison. This is the man you married, this is who you're supposed to be with, you know. And I started sharing that, and people were like, wait a minute, Lynn, you know, it's about people, places, and things. But I was back in that little box again, you know, that little fear-based place, that place that lied to me, that place that told me I couldn't grow, that place that told me I didn't deserve things. And as I shared it, the women would work on me, you know, and some of the men too, for real. I mean, gave me like healthy guidance, you know, they were really coming from a respectful place, and they were coming from love. And I was able, through the people on Staten Island, to make a decision that, like, yeah, maybe this wasn't a healthy choice for me, you know, and maybe I am capable of raising these 3 children in recovery without the support of a man, you know, and maybe that higher power, that loving higher power I was finding in here, if I trusted, was going to provide, so I would be able to do that. And that'll be 12 years ago this coming February, and I have to tell you, I was capable of raising those 3 children, you know, and they're not perfect, and neither is their mother, but for where we came from and what we've been through, I really believe that, like, we're miracles, you know, and a lot of the values, because of being open-minded in this fellowship that I've given my children, they wouldn't have got if I wasn't coming here. I grew up on the South Shore. I have to mention this. I grew up on the South Shore of Staten Island, and the South Shore is predominantly middle-class white, you know, and I went to school there, and I was raised there, and we lived in a nice house with the pool in the backyard and the green gardens, and it was all bullshit, you know, because we were all dysfunctional. And when I came into recovery, I made a decision to move to the Port Richmond area, you know, and the reason I made a decision to move here is because economically it was feasible for me. Spiritually, there was a lot of growth here for me. You know, I got to experience things in my recovery in this part of the island I wouldn't have been able to get somewhere else, you know, and when I tell you the qualities that I was able to give to my children in recovery, other than the ones I thought I was supposed to give them, came from being able to be open-minded to move to the area that I did. And I always get uncomfortable when I talk about this, and I'm sorry about that, but it's a fact to life, you know what I mean? What I've learned in Narcotics Anonymous is that we are all brothers and sisters. You know, we all come from different places. I can't imagine what it was like to walk in your shoes because I didn't walk in them. And you can't imagine what it was like to walk in my shoes because you didn't walk in them. But we each had our own path, you know. And I believe we were all brought here for a special reason. And I believe, I get chills when I talk about it, whatever that thing is that goes on with us here is so much bigger than all of us, and so much bigger than any of us can even comprehend. And being open-minded. Getting off welfare was being open-minded. Going to work. I gotta tell you this one. I came into recovery. I had no teeth because my ex-husband had kicked him out. And my sponsor tells me that I could go into Manhattan and go for a job interview to be a receptionist in a big corporation sitting at their front desk. I said, this woman's gotta be crazy. Did she notice I have no teeth in my mouth? I have no means of getting any teeth in my mouth, and they think I'm gonna work as a receptionist to support my children? And I had another experience with being open-minded. She told me, well, why don't you just try it anyway? She says, and if God wants you to have that job, you're going to get that job. And if you're not supposed to have that job, you're not going to get that job. And when I went up and they hired me that day with no teeth. Did you remember? I had no teeth in my mouth and they hired me that day. I couldn't believe it. And I worked as a receptionist in that company for 7 years with no front teeth. And I did a great job. And I even learned in recovery how to smile without people being able to see I didn't have any front teeth. And I thought that was like really cool. And I mean, I could go on and on and on, and I could talk about addiction, and I could talk about how we do the same things over and over again, expecting different results, you know, and I could talk about how I do it. But the only thing I can tell you that keeps me here and keeps me clean is on a daily basis, allowing myself to open up and listen to another person. And it doesn't necessarily mean I have to take everybody's suggestions. But how do they say it? If enough people tell you you're a horse, you should put on a saddle? Is that how it goes? It's something like that. And that's what I learned in here. If enough people notice something about me, maybe it's something I have to be open-minded enough to look at and change. Hi. And I don't know what else to say about it, you know? It's like if you stay closed, you're not going to get nowhere, you know? If you stay closed, you may be able to maintain a day at a time, coming to meetings and not picking up drugs. But if you stay closed, you may stay in unhealthy relationships. If you stay closed, you may still go out and boost, you know? If you stay closed, you may still gossip about your friends. If you stay closed, you may not allow yourself to heal enough to let a lot of people in your life to experience a lot of love, you know? And the only way I know how to not stay closed is to work real hard at staying open. It's not easy for me. You know, people meet me and they think that I'm a real friendly person, and women will say to me, well, I ain't got it like you, Lynn. You know, like you could go somewhere and you have no problem like mixing with people. That's not true. I'm scared, you know, and I'm real shy. And if I really listen to that noise that goes on in my head, I could believe that nobody ever wants to get close to me, you know? But that's the disease. When I risk it. You know, I took a risk getting up here today. I had no idea even what the topic was I was going to speak about. They called me 2 days ago, and they asked me, and I said, okay, if I can come from work, you know, because like I work today, because like I got to pay the rent. You know what I mean? And like I got to pay the car insurance, and I have to buy food, and they turn off my phone when I don't pay the phone bill, you know? So like, I have to work today. I have to support myself. I have to take care of myself. And I said, okay, if I could come and speak after 4:30, I'd be more than happy to come speak. And like, I'm here, and I got to share, and I also had an opportunity, because the meeting ran an hour late, to hear a lot of other speakers, you know, and be open-minded enough to listen to what they had to say. And the majority of the people that were up here speaking was telling my story anyhow, you know, or something that I'm going through. And it's like, I'll just finish with this one thing. That husband that I divorced in recovery never did get clean. He died 3 years ago, last month, from this disease. My second husband, number 2 in here, he went to a rehab and he never came home. He went to a rehab in Florida. He found something more comfortable, something nicer. I don't know, maybe the grass was like greener on the other side of the fence. I don't know what the deal was. And he never came home. And it was like, if I wasn't open-minded enough to come in here and share that pain and talk about the loss and the grief and the low self-esteem that I felt from the end of that marriage, I wouldn't be able to be here today and speak to you, you know? And I got in another relationship after that. And that guy had a problem with chronically relapsing. And he's like a really nice man, and I love him, but like, you know, he's got a problem with relapsing. And I had to be open-minded and look at Lynn. And I had to say to myself, what is it about yourself, Lynn, that you're doing over and over again that attracts people who chronically relapse, and you consistently fall in love with them and maintain relationships with people who are struggling to get clean? And let me tell you something, it was a real rude awakening for me. And a light bulb just went off, you know, like it just lit up in my head. And something said to me, you don't have to do this anymore. You're not God. You can't save anybody but yourself. You can't get anybody clean but yourself. You don't have that kind of power. So you don't pick up and you go to a meeting and you talk about it. And you humble yourself, you know. And you admit who you are. And a day at a time, we stay clean and we grow, you know, and that's it. And thanks.